Thank you for coming this evening to today's Bhagavad Gita class. So we'll start with a bhajan, Jai Radha Madhava. Hopefully you'll know it, so you can follow in call and response. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Gokula Nanda, Radha Gokula Nanda Shri Radhe. Jaya Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman, Jaya Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman. Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai, Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ji ki jai, Shri Shri Gauranitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, Hare Krishna. So we are reading from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, text 20. And before we begin, we'll just chant some prayers to invocate the blessings and the mercy of our previous teachers. So you can repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Chant the Mangalacharan. You can recite along with me. Om Gyantimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Okay, so we are on chapter 12, which is entitled Devotional Service, and we are on text number 20. Do you have... there's something. Okay, so if I chant, you can... Yetu dharmamritam idam yoktatam paryupasate Shraddhana mat parama Bhaktastetiva me priyaha ye tu dharmamritam idam yathoktam paryupasate Shradhana matparama Bhaktastetiva me priyaha ye tu dharmamritam idam yathoktam paryupasate Shradhana matparama Bhaktastetiva me priyaha. Would anyone like to recite? Yetu dharmamritam idam yathoktam paripasate Shradhana matparama Bhaktastetiva me priyaha. Ye tu dharmamritam idam yathoktam paryupasate Shradhana matparama Bhaktastetiva me priyaha. Okay. Ye tu dharmamritam idam yathoktam paryupasate Shraddhana matparama Bhaktastetiva me priyaha. Okay, we'll do the word for word. And you can repeat. Ye, those who. Tu, but. Dharma, of religion. Amritam, nectar. Idam, this. Yatha, as. Uktam, said. Paryupasate, completely engage. Shraddhanaha, with faith. Matparamaha, taking me, the Supreme Lord, as everything. Bhaktaha, devotees. Te, they. Ativa, very, very. Me, to me. Priyaha, dear. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. Purport. In this chapter, from verse 2 through the end, from Mai Aveshya Manoye Mam, fixing the mind on me, through Yetu Dharmamritam Idam, this religion of eternal engagement, the Supreme Lord has explained the processes of transcendental service for approaching Him. Such processes are very dear to the Lord, and He accepts a person engaged in them. The question of who is better, one who is engaged in the path of impersonal Brahman, or one who is engaged in the personal service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was raised by Arjuna, and the Lord replied to him so explicitly that there is no doubt that devotional service to the Personality of Godhead is the best of all processes of spiritual realization. In other words, in this chapter, it is decided that through good association, one develops attachment for pure devotional service, and thereby accepts a bona fide spiritual master, and from him begins to hear and chant and observe the regulative principles of devotional service with faith, attachment, and devotion, and thus becomes engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. This path is recommended in this chapter. Therefore, there is no doubt that devotional service is the only absolute path for self-realization, for the attainment of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The impersonal conception of the Supreme Absolute Truth, as described in this chapter, is recommended only up to the time one surrenders himself for self-realization. In other words, as long as one does not have the chance to associate with a pure devotee, the impersonal conception may be beneficial. In the impersonal conception of the Absolute Truth, one works without fruitive result, meditates and cultivates knowledge to understand spirit and matter. This is necessary as long as one is not in the association of a pure devotee. Fortunately, if one develops directly a desire to engage in Krishna consciousness in pure devotional service, he does not need to undergo step-by-step improvements in spiritual realization. Devotional service, as described in the middle 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, is more congenial. One need not bother about materials to keep body and soul together, because by the grace of the Lord, everything is carried out automatically. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purport to the 12th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of devotional service. So, how many of you have read the Bhagavad Gita? Or part of it at least, so you're familiar with it, right? So you've probably heard that the Bhagavad Gita is split into 3 parts, and the first 6 chapters are known as Karma Yoga, describing Karma Yoga. The middle 6 chapters are Bhakti Yoga, and the last 6 chapters are Jnana Yoga. And it's like an analogy of a sandwich is given, that the essence, the real substance is always in the middle, and that's the most important part, like of a sandwich, right? The filling. So similarly in the Bhagavad Gita, the middle 6 chapters are the real deal. It's about Bhakti Yoga, the topmost. And we're on the 12th chapter, which is the last chapter of those middle 6 chapters, and we're on the last verse. So we can tell from the verse itself, like Krishna is just saying, the summary of everything, just engage in devotional service. But just to sort of summarize this chapter, in the first 7 verses, Krishna establishes the supremacy of Bhakti Yoga, because Arjuna asks, who is better, the impersonalist or the personalist? And Krishna explains how the pure devotees who are always absorbed in the thought of Krishna, they're actually the supreme spiritual seekers. So even those who are, seeking the impersonal aspect of the Lord, they're still spiritual seekers. But Krishna explains that those who are seeking the personal aspect of the Lord, they're superior spiritual seekers. And so he gives a comparison between Bhakti Yoga and Jnana Yoga, and explains that actually the path of Jnana Yoga is actually much more difficult compared to Bhakti Yoga. And then verses 8 to 12, Krishna then goes on to explain a little bit more about the different levels of Bhakti Yoga, the different progressive levels. So he starts with the topmost, like the ideal is to absorb our mind in Krishna. If we can't do that, then he says absorb your intelligence in him. If you can't do that, then do abhyas, practice fixing your mind on Krishna. If you can't do that, then offer the results of your work to Krishna. If you can't do that, then just give the attachment to your results and give it to some other good cause. So Krishna sort of explains, the topmost, and then kind of goes down. Okay, if you can't do this, then do this, then do this, making it easy for us to kind of work our way up. And then in the last 8 verses, so that's verses 13 to 20, Krishna actually describes over 30 qualities or characteristics that endear one to Krishna. So, what qualities should one have that will make one dear to Krishna, a recipient of his mercy, a recipient of his grace? And if you notice in verses 13 to 19, he'll explain different qualities, and then he says, this person is very dear to me. But in verse 20, if you see, then Krishna describes, those who follow this path of devotional service, they're very, very dear to me, So he concludes with very, very dear. So that sort of says something, right? And that's because the primary quality of a devotee is his devotion to Krishna. And that's what makes him really, really dear to Krishna. And all the other qualities that are mentioned, they're actually considered secondary. But that doesn't mean that they're not important. So it's like, for example, when we're told that devotional service, bhakti, is like a seed that we're given, through mercy. But a seed needs to fructify, right? It's no use being a seed. And so you've got to plant it in some soil and water it, right? So there's the watering process, which we hear is, our practice. But the soil itself has to be quite fertile, right? If it's not fertile, then even if you water it, it's not really going to grow. The seed won't fructify. And so similarly, the seed of bhakti that we've been given, through the transcendental literature, through Srila Prabhupada, through the devotees, that we've been given. But now we need to make our hearts and minds, which are like the soil, we need to make that fertile so that the seed of bhakti can grow. And we can do that by developing these qualities that are mentioned in the previous 7 verses, in verses 13 to 19. And bhakti yoga is so powerful that by the practice of bhakti yoga, we will naturally develop these qualities. But equally, we can actually actively work on cultivating them, and that will also help us in progressing in bhakti. So they both go hand in hand. When we love someone, we want to please them, we want to make them happy, and usually we work on ourselves, we try to improve ourselves. And we try to bring in those qualities that they would appreciate. So similarly, we want to reawaken our love for Krishna and re-establish our relationship with him. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai, Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshmi Hanuman ji ki jai, Shri Shri Gauranitai ki jai. So yeah, we want to re-establish our love for Krishna, re-establish our relationship with him, and we can demonstrate our sincerity in wanting to do this and our desire to do this by working on ourselves, actively working on imbibing these qualities, which he himself is saying will endear one to him. Often when we think about a goal that we want to achieve, it can seem really, really far away. And it's like, impossible, I can't get there. And so what do? We set ourselves some smaller goals to work towards that bigger goal. And it also helps us to measure progress, if we can say we've reached a particular milestone on our way to achieving the bigger goal. And so we don't get disheartened and we keep going, right? So when we think about developing these qualities that Krishna explains in this chapter, we can feel like, oh, I'm never going to get there. Like, I can't be like this. But, only a saintly person can be like this. But if we can put some smaller goals into place and work towards it, then, we can also achieve it. And something I came across really, really interesting was like a framework in one sense. A senior devotee was explaining that these qualities are actually present in 4 different phases. So I'll just go through those phases and then explain. So there's Ichcharupa, there is Abhyasarupa, there is Siddharupa and Sthirarupa. So Ichcharupa, the first one, is like you hear about the qualities, you really like them, you appreciate it, but you just feel like I'm not quite ready yet to actually try and develop those qualities. They just feel like beyond my capacity. So yes, I have a desire, I want to develop it someday, but not quite now. And then Abhyasarupa is, I actually want to work on these qualities, so I'm going to try. I want to achieve it. I'm going to try my best. I'm going to train myself. And then you have Siddharupa, which is where when you're in like some favorable situation, you're actually able to imbibe those qualities and demonstrate them and act in that way. But when you're in an unfavorable situation, you might get a little bit thrown off, and so you might not act in that way, so you're a little bit unsteady, not constant, sometimes up, sometimes down. And then you have Sthirarupa. Sthira means steady, right? So for example, somebody may give up eating meat completely, and they never look back. They never touch meat again, and that just doesn't change. So that's steady, right? But unsteady is an example where like we might be nice to someone, but then if someone else isn't being nice to us, we kind of then show our not so nice side. So that's not sthira, that's not steady, right? We might be negative. So as we go through some of the qualities which we'll discuss today, we can reflect, where are we for each particular quality, which stage are we at? and what's the next stage, and how can I work towards progressing, go up a level. So let's talk about some of these qualities, what they actually mean, how we can cultivate them. We won't get through all of them, there's over 30, but just to sort of categorize them, I read that you can categorize them into sort of 4 different buckets. So they're attitudes towards oneself, dealings with other living entities, reaction when things happen to yourself, and then dealings with the Lord. So these kind of 30 plus qualities, you can categorize them into one of these. And actually what you'll find is the majority of them are not in that last category of dealing with the Lord. They're actually in the 3 above that I mentioned, which are all to do with actually us and our behavior. And so it's quite important that we recognize that, yes, we want to develop our relationship with Krishna, but in that journey, it's really important that we work on our thought processes, our behavior, our actions, because that's what's going to please Krishna. So we're actually going to talk about, most of the qualities we'll discuss today are actually from verses 13 to 14 in this chapter. So I'll just read the English translation of that verse, and then we'll get into some of the qualities. So Krishna says, one who is not envious, but is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor and is free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, who is tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and engaged in devotional service with determination, his mind and intelligence fixed on me. Such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. So the first quality we'll discuss is the first one in that verse, which is adveshta, non-envious. So where does envy come from? Why are we envious? And it's actually explained that it comes from a lack of knowledge. And why is that? It's because we don't study. We don't study scripture. We don't have that knowledge. And so we're not understanding what's actually happening to us. And the things that are happening to us is a result of our karma, right? But because we don't understand and accept that, we're envious and we get upset and angry with other people and we think they're the cause of our problems and our distress. But actually, that's the wrong assumption to have, that, this person has caused the problem in my life and is the cause of my suffering. Actually, we're actually told in our scriptures that there's actually 3 causes. There's the immediate cause, there's the real cause, and there's the ultimate cause. The person who we're engaging with, our actions and the reactions associated with that, and ultimately Krishna, right? Because ultimately he sanctions everything. But, everything begins with our desire and our actions. There's a famous saying you may have heard, watch your thoughts, they become words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, they become character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny, right? So in that saying, it all started off with thoughts. But actually our scriptures explain there's something even before that, and that's desire. So the seed for everything is actually desire. When we desire something, then that leads to a whole chain of reactions, and it manifests into then thoughts and actions and reactions. So whatever envy that we're actually seeing, there's something even more deep-rooted. It's actually just considered like the tip of the iceberg. We're not really seeing the full picture. I explained that envy is due to lack of knowledge, and it's because we're not connecting to Krishna. If we're connected to Krishna, there won't be any envy, because things won't affect us in the same way. Like, for example, a man who goes out to work, something happens at work and that just agitates him a lot. He'll come back, and then, his wife will have cooked a really nice meal, and he'll sit down and he'll complain about the food, right? And the food was absolutely fine, right? But his disturbance was at work. But he took it out on his wife and on the food, right? So similarly, when we're not connected to Krishna, we play this blame game, right? We blame others. But actually, the cause is something else. And actually, it's not the outside. It's to do with the inside. It's the internals. Because if we notice us, in a good situation, when our mood is good, we seem to behave nicely with others. When our mood is bad, we don't always act pleasantly with others. So there's something internal going on. And when we're not connected to Krishna, it's like we're seeing things with a different lens. We've got some glasses and it's coloring our vision. So, how can we connect to Krishna? How can we be non-envious? Well, there's two things we can do. One is introspection. So, we may be performing our sadhana, our devotional service of chanting and reading and different, activities in devotional service. But how much are we actually looking at ourselves in the mirror, that where am I at with these qualities? How much have I actually still got to work on? And the second is, we can actually see everybody else as a part and parcel of Krishna. Have affection and love for everyone. Like we have our body, right? And imagine, so our hand, right? Would we ever get envious of our hand? No, right? Like we see our hand as part of us, right? And so we'd never want to attack it, chop it off, be mean to it. Like it just doesn't make sense, does it? So similarly, everyone is a part and parcel of Krishna. So if we have that vision, we wouldn't want to harm someone else. We wouldn't think negatively of someone else. We wouldn't really be envious of them either. There's the example of, in the Mahabharata, Duryodhan, who was the son of Dhritarashtra, and Yudhishthira, who was the son of Pandu. And, so there was the Kauravas and the Pandavas, and that's what the Battle of Kurukshetra was around, the two sides. Duryodhan, who was on the side of the Kauravas, was really envious of Yudhishthira and the Pandavas, right? And he did so much, he caused so much harm to them in that envy. But the Pandavas were never envious back to Duryodhan, And so even if someone is envious to us, that doesn't mean that we need to necessarily be envious to them. And in this verse, it doesn't just say adveshta, it says adveshta sarva bhutanam. That means non-enviousness to everyone, universal non-enviousness, not selective, right? So not envying any living entity, right? Whether they are a devotee or not a devotee, whether they're a human being or not a human being. Everyone ultimately is a jiva, right? And so we're all covered with different levels of ignorance, but ultimately we are all parts of the Lord. In terms of non-enviousness, I read that there are actually 3 levels you can consider it as. So the first level is not being envious of another person. So when, somebody close to you is actually flourishing, has some success, whether that's in their material life or in their spiritual life, it shouldn't cause some agitation in your heart. It shouldn't cause envy in your heart, Let them be successful, but that shouldn't bother you. That shouldn't disturb you. And envy isn't about tolerating someone else's success, Envy comes out of insecurity, that, this person's successful, what's going to happen to me? We always think if someone has it, then I can't have it. That's the problem with envy, right? But that first level of envy is we shouldn't be envious of another person. And the second level is a step beyond that, where, not only are we not jealous of them when they're successful, but actually we're genuinely their well-wisher. And we go out of our way to help, assist, serve in whatever capacity we can, a genuine well-wisher. And then the third level is even beyond that at a society level, right? So the first two is more on a personal level, and the third is more at a society level, where we have a God-centered society where there is no competition between each other, and we just inspire everyone to become a well-wisher of others. So we can reflect, at least on the personal level, how can I work on my non-enviousness? And how can I not be critical of others? When we become rich with Krishna's love, then nothing will actually bother us. If you've got a lot of money in the bank, if you withdraw a little bit, then actually you don't really see much difference, So similarly, if we're rich with Krishna's love, if someone acts a little bit inappropriately, it shouldn't really bother us, So we don't need to get disturbed when other people may act negatively or are envious towards us. But we can work on our non-enviousness. So that was the first quality. The second one is maitri. So maitri means friendliness. Not friendship, but friendliness. And that means, in the ultimate sense, loving unconditionally everyone. But that's hard because, there's sometimes we have problems with some people, right? And it's hard to be friendly towards them when we have some sort of tension with them. But this is what Krishna is saying. I want you to be friendly to everyone. But our friendliness seems to be conditional. Like if someone behaves with me in a proper way, then I'm okay. If they don't, then I'm not going to be friendly towards them, But no, we should be friendly, and we should be happy to see devotees. And not just devotees, anybody. We should feel happy when we see anyone. And we should make others feel happy. They should feel happy when they're around us. So how can we work on this? A practical way is make a list of people that you would regard as, I don't really like this person, and work on it. Because they hold the key for us to progress with actually working on this quality. Try and identify, what is it about this person that I don't like? Or I get this impression that I don't like them and I can't be friendly towards them, Dig deeper. Maybe they've done something to us and we think, I can't forgive them. But, forgiveness is really, really important. And, the tit for tat mentality really isn't going to help us. Arjun in the Bhagavad Gita we're reading, he says he doesn't want to fight. And in the end, he does surrender and he does actually fight. But it's not in the mood of tit for tat. Like the Kauravas, did so much harm to us, and that's why I'm going to get back at them. He fought because Krishna wanted him to fight, right? So he did it with the right mindset. Another example is, when apparently when a monkey looks in the mirror, it doesn't obviously comprehend that it's a reflection of itself, right? And so it will try and attack because it thinks, there's someone who's trying to harm, and it's someone else. When we look in the mirror, we actually see, we understand that it's us ourselves, right? So we're not going to go and attack that, this is a stranger and they're out to get me and so I'm going to attack them. We don't react like that. So similarly, when we look at another person, our reaction should be very similar. Just as we wouldn't do anything when we look at a reflection of ourselves, when we are with somebody else, we should see them as a part and parcel of Krishna. And when I say, friendliness, maitri, like I said, it doesn't mean you have to be friends with everyone. You don't have to be best friends with everyone, but we have to be friendly with everyone, right? Have a good, positive attitude towards everyone. The third quality is nirmama. So mama means mine, me, and nir means not. And Prabhupada in the verse translates nirmama as no sense of proprietorship. So there was once a man who was told, like there was some commotion going on, and he asked somebody, what's happening? And they were like, somebody stole something, and so they're just beating the person. He's like, yeah, good, beat them. They shouldn't be doing that. That's wrong. They shouldn't be stealing. And then as he walked closer to the commotion, he saw that the person that was being beaten was his own son. And so, something changed in him. And then he started telling them, please don't be so harsh. Don't punish him so much. He's just a small boy. He made a mistake. So, because of his attachment to his son, something shifted in his reaction, right? So the vision was tainted a bit. He saw things differently. So similarly, when we have attachment to things, our vision is also tainted. Our behavior is also conditional. But actually, we should be fair to everyone. And our attachment to things can be in the most silliest of things, right? So for example, like when I go into work, there's like a certain seat I want to sit in. You just become attached to sitting there because you like it, because you've sat there for ages, or the temperature just feels right, or the setup is just really comfortable, like I sit here every day kind of thing. So we can get attached to that. We can get attached to like our pillow, our blanket, which side we sleep on. So many things, little things like that we're not even conscious of that we get attached to, right? It's said that even a beggar can get attached to his begging bowl. There was once a king who left his kingdom, his family, just renouncing everything. And he went to the riverside to bathe. And there was another renunciate there. And the king hung his towel on like a branch of a tree that was nearby while he was bathing. And another renunciate who'd come wanted to put his towel there also. And so they started an argument around which one of them was allowed to put the towel on the branch of that tree. And then a washerwoman, came by, and she was asking like, what's going on? And she could see the argument that was going on over the towel. And she said to the king, like, you've left everything. You left your family, you left the whole kingdom, your wealth, your opulence, everything. And now you're here arguing over a towel on a branch, And this sense of proprietorship was so strong. And so the king was like, he just was a bit dejected and he walked away. But even, like he left everything and he became attached to a towel on a branch. So we can get attached to so many things. But nirmama, it means not having a sense of proprietorship, ownership, and possessiveness. So we may have possessions, we may own things, but what should be our behavior? We should act like a trustee, a caretaker. These things are under my care. I am a responsible caretaker. I'm not the proprietor, I'm not the owner. Because if we consider ourselves the proprietor, then naturally what seeps in is the enjoying mentality. This belongs to me, and so I want to enjoy it, right? But the Gita teaches us that, we're not meant to have an enjoying mentality, right? We're meant to have a service mentality. And why is that? Because actually, Krishna is the proprietor, and so everything belongs to God. And ultimately, even if we own things, for how long do we even have them, at the best, until we leave our body, because at that point we have to give up everything anyways, right? But often we will lose things even before then, right? So it's not like we're going to have these things forever. And, we may be blessed with certain things physically, like wealth, opulence, or even subtly, like fame, name, prestige. And Krishna's not saying it's wrong to have these things, but what isn't right is becoming puffed up and proud about having these. So it's not having possessions that is wrong, it's the possessiveness which is wrong. And it's not just objects, but also people, we might refer to people as, oh, this is my child, this is my mother, this is my partner, this is my grandmother, my grandfather. But we should actually see them as they have been given to us to serve, to care for, and we should have this mood of service. And we may think that, but if nothing belongs to me, why should I care? What's my motivation to actually care? But if you think about it, if someone entrusts you with something, do you actually take less care or more care? More care, right? Because you know that this belongs to someone else and you don't want anything to happen to it. And actually you go a little bit above and beyond than you might normally do to make sure that, it's not damaged or nothing wrong happens, right? So similarly, if we have this mood of like, everyone is a part and parcel of Krishna. Everything I have, every object, everything I have is a gift, and I have to look after it or them and have this mood of service. We will actually have the right mentality. We will actually care for people and objects even more. We'll be more careful, more disciplined, more protective. So that was nirmama. And then the last one that I want to cover is Krishna says to give his mind and intelligence to him. And it's not just in this chapter, but in other verses in the Gita as well. In 934, for example, he says, Man mana bhava man bhakto, engage your mind, become my devotee. And he doesn't say body, he says mind, because as we know, the subtle body is carried through different lifetimes, right? We leave the physical body, but the subtle body is carried, the mind, the intelligence, the false ego. So we really need to work on our mind. In chapter 8, verse 6, it said, whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. So Krishna is saying, whatever you remember at the time of death, that's, where you're going to go. So isn't it important then to work on our mind? And we think it's so difficult, right? The mind can go through so many different states almost. There's you could have a donkey-like mind, which is really lazy. There's no energy. You can't be bothered to do anything. You're confused. You could have a monkey-like mind where it's just restless. It's really fickle, jumping from one place to another between extremes. Could be like a butterfly where it's it perches somewhere and it stays there for a little while, but then moves on. But what do we want? We want it to be fixed, one-pointed, almost like a statue, just be fixed on Krishna. Don't move. We want to be consistent. We want to be steady. And we hear, ultimate principle in spiritual life. What are the two things that, are the principal things that we need to always abide by? It's always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna, right? And all the other principles are supportive of that. And remembrance is to do with the mind, right? So it's really, really important to work on it. And Arjun actually tells Krishna in chapter 6, verse 34, Chanchalam himana Krishna pramati balavadridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayoriva suduskaram. The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna, and to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. He says controlling the mind is even more difficult than controlling the wind, right? The wind is so powerful, imagine that. But it's even more difficult to control the mind. And in the next verse, Krishna answers and says, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment, right? So Krishna tells us, you can do it. You just have to practice and be detached. And so when we talk about engaging, so how can we engage our mind and intelligence in serving Krishna like he wants? So there's a few things we can do. So one is reducing our activities that are not favorable to devotional service, things that oppose it. It's really important that we look at, what are we exposing ourselves to? What are we consuming through our senses? Because that really, really affects our mind. It influences our thoughts and our desires as well. So let's be conscious about what we're feeding our senses. What are we watching? What are we hearing? What are we exposing ourselves to? And favor those things that will help us connect more to Krishna. And in terms of the intelligence, in the 18th chapter, verse 70, Krishna says, he who studies the sacred conversation of ours worships me by his intelligence. So if we study scripture, we're actually engaging the intelligence in service. And so, the temple is a place of worship, but it's also temple is a place of spiritual education. So we have daily classes, we have courses at the temple as well. So take advantage. Just to conclude, so many qualities Krishna describes, and it can feel impossible to get there. But we can start off with where we're at. We know what the goal is and where we need to go. And if we feel overwhelmed, we can just remember, why are we doing this? Krishna says because this will make us very dear to him. So if I let go of my lower nature and just try to improve, I can become dear to Krishna. So we can keep reminding ourselves of this. And we can remember those 4 stages that we talked about, Ichcharupa, Abhyasa, Rupa, Siddha Rupa, and Sthira Rupa. Where are we at? Assess ourselves honestly. What is the next stage where I want to get to? And what are the steps that we can take to get there? Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
श्री श्री राधा गोकुलानंद की, श्री सीता राम लक्ष्मण हनुमान जी की, श्री श्री गौर निताय की, श्रीला प्रभुपाद की। जय राधा गोकुलानंद, राधा गोकुलानंद, राधा गोकुलानंद श्री राधे। जय सीता राम लक्ष्मण हनुमान, जय सीता राम लक्ष्मण हनुमान। जय गौरनिताय, 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 जय गौरनिताय। जय जय प्रभुपाद, 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद। जीव जय जय गौरचांदे, आरती को शोभा। जीव जय गौरचांदे, आरती को शोभा। जय जानवी तटवानी, जगा मन लोभा। जानवी तटवानी, जगा मन लोभा। जाकी